When I woke up from that surgery, that spinal cord surgery that had me paralyzed from the chest down, and my doctors told me that, you might walk again, but you're going to need durable medical equipment to do so, cane, walker, crutches. And I asked them, am I ever going to run again? And they said, no. The first thing that popped into my mind was, watch me. Because you're not going to tell me what I can and cannot do. I was like, not only am I going to walk, I'm going to run a freaking marathon.
Welcome back, Incubators. Today, I have a really special treat for us. My friend, Ian Bowen. In 2009, at just 32, Ian's life changed in an instant when he was diagnosed with neurosarcoidosis, a rare disease that left him paralyzed from the chest down. With 2 young kids and doctors saying he'd never run again, most people would have given up. I think I might have, but Ian did not. Through sheer willpower and what he calls positive persistence, he relearned to sit, stand, and eventually he ran a marathon in 2022. Today, as founder of Positive Persistence, he's teaching others how to overcome adversity, rise from setbacks, and live with a, quote, watch me mindset, which I love that. Welcome, Ian.
Thanks, Abby. It is a pleasure of mine to be here talking with you, and I can't wait to cut it up a little bit, if you will.
Yeah. I love that watch me mindset because I just was something I never had growing up. It was sort of like if I was told or meant to feel or interpreted what was happening as I couldn't, I was just kind of like, oh yeah, you're right, I can't.
Yeah.
And this was not in your DNA. Tell me about that.
I think that I jokingly say this, but I think it's really true. Rest his soul. It's thanks to my father. I've always had a bit of an adversarial relationship with authority because I grew up in a household where, I was raised but rarely praised, if that makes sense. And my father was very strict, and he had very high expectations. And he and I did not get along, and we butted heads a lot. And it was kind of like, this is how you're going to do it, and this is because I'm your father. And I was kind of raised in the scenario where children are meant to be seen, not heard type of deal.
Yeah.
And I've always had that I'm going to do it my way kind of mentality. I think partially because of that, because I just didn't jive with that vibe, especially once I got into my teenage years. And, you start thinking for yourself and you start wanting to assert your independence. Then we really started to bump heads, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to do it your way. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it my way. Yeah. And there's been other instances and experiences in my life where I've had to rely on myself, being an only child, rely on myself to get through some situations. And because of that, I think I've built this, I guess you could say, resilience over time. I started at a pretty young age. Just a quick story of being put in a camp when I was 8 years old. Now, when you hear camp, you think, oh, kumbaya, day camp, Boy Scout camp, whatever it is. Well, this was a 4-week overnight camp where I was driven 5 hours away from home. Parents dropped me off at this camp, which was on an island. So you had to take a boat to get there.
Oh my gosh.
And it was see you later for 4 weeks. And we were taking canoe trips during this camp. You had to paddle for miles, and you had everything with you. So you literally had a 40-pound backpack with all of your stuff, camping gear, your clothes, your food. And we were up in the boundary waters of Minnesota, right on the border of Canada. Beautiful area. But when you're 8, you're like, man, I got to paddle like 3, 4, 5 miles today. And when you would get to land, it wouldn't be like, well, our trek is done for the day. You would then have to do what's called portaging. So you would now take all your stuff out of your canoe, put that 40-pound pack on your back, hold the canoe over your head as you are now marching through the woods until you get to the other side of that landmass, put your canoe back in the water, stuff back in the boat, and you're paddling on until you get to your final destination for the day.
Wow.
And you get up and do it again the next day. Now, this is when I'm 8. years
Yeah.
old, right? Now, most kids are maybe having their first sleepover
Well,
at
it's
8.
funny because it's hilarious because when I was 7, my parents sent me to sleepaway camp for a month.
Really?
Yes. Isn't that so funny? And like
That is.
nobody would do that. Yeah. It was like I
Yeah.
saw them one day, 2 weeks in on parent day, begged them to take me home. They said no.
Yeah.
And that was every summer. Now, I was not made to canoe and hold it over my head or any of those things, but I get exactly what you're saying. It was,
Yeah.
I want to be home.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Like
7. Yeah.
being, having that heartache of
Yes.
missing home, and that homesickness was like palpable, it was real.
Yeah.
But again, 5 hours away, and we got one phone call for those 4 weeks, and that was it. You
Wow.
couldn't see your parents; they couldn't come visit. You couldn't go home. You were there. So my point is, at an early age, I started to develop that resilience, I guess, skill in, counting on myself to
Yeah.
get myself through the situation. And to your point, when I woke up from that surgery, that spinal cord surgery that had me paralyzed from the chest down, and my doctors told me that, you might walk again, but you're going to need durable medical equipment to do so, cane, walker, crutches. And I asked them, am I ever going to run again? And they said, no. The first thing that popped into my mind was, watch me. Because
Mm.
you're not going to tell me what I can and cannot do. And if there's anything that anyone takes away from this conversation, I want to beg of you to realize that there is no situation where you should ever let someone else's interpretation of your capabilities become your reality.
Mm.
Because at that point, you give your power away. You give them your power. Now you've allowed what they think to become how you're going to identify with yourself. And fortunate enough for me, I didn't allow that to happen. I did the exact opposite. And I believe that came from all of my experiences in life leading up to that point of me having that resilience skill. And I know for a fact that everybody has the potential to do that in any circumstance, in any
Yeah.
situation where they're facing adversity, they can do that same thing.
I love that message and particularly the way that you worded around don't let the way anyone else define you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let that be your version of yourself. And of course, half the time we're maybe even projecting how we fear other people see us, and then we make that our story, which is
Yeah.
even worse than someone telling us that's actually how they see us and making that their story. That is such an unbelievable message. Say it again the way that you said it. Like,
So never let someone else's perception of your capabilities
yeah.
become your reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we talk particularly about the medical field now, which, when I was growing up, they knew what was best for you and you just did that, right?
Yes.
And now, of
Quote
course,
unquote.
quote
Yes.
unquote, right? Yeah.
Right, right.
But we trusted and we believed, and
Mm-hmm.
now like it could not be further from the truth. And of course, all we also know, not that I don't mean to undermine the medical community. I mean, there's tons and tons of value there,
Absolutely.
but it's not the way it used to be. They're
Right.
under stress. The insurance companies, there's pressure. They're not educated in so much, of the emotional components of healing and the
Mm-hmm.
neuroscience behind what happens when you tell someone something when they're
Yes.
in a state of trauma.
Yes.
And so, to your point, it's amazing because I'm sure you were stunned to wake up and find out that you can't feel your legs. And that's when
Well,
they say you're never gonna, they
mhm.
put right in that moment of trauma with your subconscious wide open because you're, traumatized, you're not never gonna run.
Right. Yeah, they did let me know before the surgery happened, because we did exhaust a bunch of other tests, because the situation was that I had a lesion growing inside my spinal cord. And I had symptoms of tingling sensations leading from my toes all the way up to my chest. I was having issues with mobility and the inability to ambulate. And I'm at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota at this time, and they exhausted all of these tests, and they came to a conclusion of, we think we know what this is. It's one of two things. It's either a tumor that's growing inside your spinal cord, so it could be cancer, or it's this disease called neurosarcoidosis. But in order for us to figure out what this is, after we have exhausted all these other options, is we need to go in and take a biopsy of this lesion. Now, the tricky part is, since it's growing inside of your spinal cord, you could be paralyzed for the rest of your life, because this is a very tricky surgery.
Yeah.
Because as you can imagine, there isn't any vacant real estate on your spinal cord. Like every millimeter of your spinal cord controls. Yes, it's something. So understanding that was a possibility, I went ahead with the surgery because we needed to know what it was so they could diagnose. And when I woke up, it was the worst possible scenario. It was that I was paralyzed from the chest down, no feeling, no movement, no nothing.
So when you remember that time, like, did it feel like sheer willpower, or did it feel like defiant, like you're not going to like watch me? Or was there also a part of it that was like an inner knowing, like, no, I know that there's another truth here?
That's
like
a great,
an intuitive hit.
great question. And I love the way you asked that, because that's what it was. It wasn't just the fact that I wanted to prove them wrong, which was initially probably part of it, but it was more of this inner knowing, Abby, like having this intuition, if you will, that this new future that they have painted for me was so far away from the identity that I had for myself and what I had envisioned for my future, that it just was so incongruent. Like, no, that's not what's going to happen. And I promised myself in that moment that I was going to do everything in my power, uncover every stone, every rock, do everything that I could to get back to 100% recovery. And that was just it. Like that, there was no other option. When I speak on this topic, I say I gave myself two options. And it was, I either make it or I make it. And that's it. So there was this inner knowing that I'm going to walk again. And I'm eventually going to run again. Now, at that time, Abby, I'd never run a marathon in my life.
Oh,
I
it
had
was. So
run,
I was wondering that it was your first marathon was after.
yeah, 13 years
Wow.
later. Now, you talk about, consistency and being really focused on a goal. It took me 13 years before I
Yeah.
was able to run a marathon. But in that moment, when they told me, even though I'd never done it before, and maybe this is where that adversarial relationship with authority kicked in, but like I went to the extreme. Like, okay, you say I'm never going to walk again without a cane. I'm going to run a marathon. And to that point, I had run like 5Ks and that was it. I had never run more than 3 miles.
Wow.
I was like, well, not only am I going to walk, I'm going to run a freaking marathon. Right. So, but again, there was that inner knowing piece, like it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a piece that just gets railroaded so often out of us, and it gets so quiet. It's so hard to hear.
Yes, you're 100% correct. There is so many instances in our lives that we can extract the emotion of being able to come back from setbacks. Not only the emotion, but actually the scenario. And we can think back to how we were able to overcome little things and big things in our life, which then give us the power to realize that we are stronger than we think. We're stronger
Right.
than we know. And that we
Right.
actually do have that power to overcome whatever obstacle is set in our way. But we tend to forget
Yes.
that we have achieved all of this greatness before,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And then when this new obstacle comes, it's like I don't have the resources or the experience or the tools to be able to overcome this challenge. Well, yes, you do.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's so
you
funny
do.
because I think we even had an email exchange where you asked me a question like that, like, hey, what are your thoughts? And I think I emailed back, I said, well, how'd you do it when you learned
Yeah,
how to walk again?
yeah,
Like, what were you experiencing then?
yeah. That's
But we
exactly
do, we
right.
forget. You're so
We
right.
forget.
We completely forget what we've done.
Mhm.
in our lives. It's like every time an obstacle comes, we can get thrown off when it's like we forget, like, holy cow, like you decided you were going to walk again and did.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that we can point to in our lives. With clients that I've worked with over the years, when they're having a hard time and they're dealing with something, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And they're a mom, like, hey, whoa, hang on a second. Like, you carried somebody in your body for
Yeah.
9 months and gave birth. Like, you can do this. You can do that. You can do this. It's like, it's stuff like that. Like, I mean, you perform like a miracle.
Right.
And now you're having this issue, writing this book or launching this business, or you're having this issue sticking to your fitness plan. It's like, wait a second. Like, you have
Yeah.
done incredible things already. Let's just remember that. But for
Yeah.
some reason, maybe it's because we're always our harshest critic, but we forget how amazing we are and the incredible things that we've already done. And once we do that, once we can start to remember those things, then we said, oh yeah, I am pretty awesome. I have done some incredible stuff. You know what? I can take on this challenge too.
Yeah. So, how do you tap into that deeper knowing when you've kind of gotten caught up in the hustle and the bustle of the daily life or whatever,
Mhm.
and you're in that? Because you have now, like, I think we were talking not that long ago, you had like 4 kids that were all sick and puking and throwing up and
Yeah.
all over. Like, I mean, like you've got a full life with a
Yeah.
lot of things going on, plus, 2 businesses and all of this stuff.
Mhm.
So I can't imagine that every day you're remembering that you ran a marathon. How do you find that space inside yourself, that inner knowing? How do you get back there?
To tell you the truth, and it may sound hokey for some, I know it doesn't for a lot, but I take time in the morning for myself and I meditate and I write in a journal. And part of my journal practice is writing affirmations and writing what my visualization for my life is. And that's when I spend some time reminding myself of how powerful I am.
Mm,
And I don't necessarily write out every day like what I have accomplished or what I've been able to achieve so far in my life, but just that I am a capable person and that I have what it takes to be able to take on the challenges that are in front of me. And those little things help me remember some of the more difficult times that I've had in my life, whether it be going through my divorce, whether it be recovering from my surgery, whether it be all the falls that I had emotionally and physically, literally and figuratively as I was recovering, whether it was launching a business or trying to hold on to my business during COVID. Like, there's so
mm,
many things that I can point to in my past that I can draw strength from. And I think that's the lesson that people need to realize, is that if you just pause and take a minute to think about all the things that you've been able to achieve, you'll start to come up with quite a impressive list. But again, they don't have to be huge accomplishments. Right? They can be
right.
small ones. They can even be like learning how to ride a bike. Right? You couldn't do that at first,
Right.
but after time, practice, a lot of falls and scrapes on your knees and elbows, you learned and you mastered it. And if you could do that, you could do it again.
Well, and one of the things that is so great about your story is that, you talk about it happening over 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine what was even just the initial recovery. It's not like you made a decision, okay, that's not going to be my reality. And then you swung your legs over the bed and you got up and went to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
how did that play out? And were there times where it was just like, maybe was wrong?
Yes and no. Like, I will say that I never told myself that I was wrong or that I couldn't do it. Words like can't, won't, don't were things that I actively eliminated from my vocabulary. And that's something that I tell my clients when I'm working with them, is like, if we're going to work together, these are 4 words, and I will include sorry as well, 5 words that you're not allowed to say when we work together, because I believe that those are powerless words that lead to negativity.
Mm,
And I was always telling myself that I can, I will, I must succeed, because I was 32 years old at the time. My daughter was 6, my son was 1. And I was like, I'll be damned if I'm going to be relegated to a life where my kids have a father who is handicapped. Now, there's nothing wrong with being handicapped, obviously, but that just wasn't the picture that I had for myself, for my life. I wanted to be able to hold my son in his arms at his, second birthday party. I wanted to be able to get down on the ground and play with my daughter. I wanted to do those things. So my quote unquote why was so big
Yeah.
that it pulled me forward. Now, to your point, there definitely were days where I was like, I had the case of the woe is me's.
Yeah.
Why did this happen to me? What if I wouldn't have elected to do the surgery? What did I do to deserve this? So there were those days, for sure. Lucky for me, I had a physical therapist in my life who I was seeing 5 days a week at the time for about a year and a half. And we had a great relationship. And she would see me on those days where typically I'm a pretty upbeat person, pretty positive person. But she would see it on my face when I'd be walking in those days. I just didn't feel like doing the work. And she was, thank goodness, she was had tough love in her. So she would see me and she would ask me what's going on. And I would tell her, I'd be feeling down, and she'd let me sit in it for a minute. And then she would look at me and she would say, okay, are you done now? Can we get to work now? And she would snap me back to like, okay, understand that you have these feelings. We're going to not necessarily address them, but we're going to acknowledge them, that you have them. But now what are we going to do about it?
Right.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, it's okay to acknowledge those negative feelings, those negative emotions. It's okay to feel defeated. But what are you going to do now? What are you going to do next? That's the pivotal key. That's the pivotal step. And thank goodness for her that she was there for me on those days, because she snapped me back to reality, back to the task, back to the mission, back
Yeah.
to the focus. Like, she didn't let me wallow in that self-pity and that self-defeat, because that doesn't serve you.
Talk about a coach. I mean, that's a
Right. Exactly.
brilliant role. And to your point as well, though, I mean, we have to go through the grief.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think a lot of times when we hear stories like this, we misunderstand that it's like going to stuff that down and I'm just going to make it happen. And I think that is not something that really works. There has to be a period of time where you also allow yourself, and maybe it's happening at the same time, you
Mm-hmm.
also allow yourself those moments of pure grief, like, why did this happen? And oh my God, like my whole life has just been ripped out from under me,
Yeah.
and feeling the depths of those emotions so that you can move through them. Did you have those experiences?
No,
You didn't.
I did not.
You didn't allow yourself to go to the
I
depth of
didn't.
the
I
emotions.
didn't allow myself to do that, and I would not recommend that for
Okay.
anybody.
Okay.
And because I was not in touch with those emotions, I stuffed them down, like you said. Like, I stuffed
Okay.
them down, and I was just focused on doing the thing, right? Like, my focus was getting better,
Yep.
any way, shape, form that I could. And that would mean going to physical therapy for an hour a day, coming home, doing my homework from physical therapy for another 2 hours to do whatever I could to get better.
Mm.
And then when the hits kept on coming, such as I got demoted twice after this, my salary got cut in half. I'm the breadwinner of the family. And
Wow.
you talk about like a hit to your ego.
Yeah.
It was, oh man, I can't allow myself to go into this pity party. I can't allow myself to really sit in those emotions and feel bad for myself, because I have to provide for my family. And I have to continue on this journey to get back to the Ian that I wanted to be.
Yeah.
However, in hindsight, that trickled out. And because like the work ethic that I had took over, as I got better and as I ventured into the world of becoming an entrepreneur, that work ethic came with me and probably doubled down. And so my relationships with my kids suffered.
Mm.
My relationship with my ex-wife suffered. And it's probably one of the reasons why our marriage ended in divorce,
Hmm.
because I wasn't in touch with my emotions to deal with this loss that I had, this
Yeah.
traumatic experience that I had. And plus, I didn't have anybody really in my circle that could help me understand that I needed to do that, or could even really help me do that, including my wife. She just wasn't equipped
Yeah.
to do that. As you mentioned, to kind of circle back on those days where it was the woe is me's would come in, and I'm not here to spew toxic positivity, because there are those days where you're feeling it and it sucks and life is kicking you in the ass. And as we know, life has those valleys and those peaks. But as soon as you can get out of that peak or out of that valley and start climbing back to the peak, the better off you're going to be. Start having some momentum, if you will, to start getting back towards at least status quo, at least homeostasis, being back to where everything's at least quote unquote copacetic. And then you can start climbing that mountain again.
Yeah, I think the difference, that I'm kind of thinking about is like the pity parties and all of that is, I agree. I don't think that's really a place that's productive, and it's not true grief. It's not real,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think, but what happens is we confuse maybe, well, I don't want to pity myself with, when you peel away that layer and you just sit with like pure grief, like not guilt ridden, not shame ridden, not self pity, but the pure grief that's just like, this is not what I planned.
Mm-hmm.
And this is hard and it's devastating. I think there's a way to experience those emotions in a very pure way that is not related to self pity. And I think when I listen to you talk about that, I think, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, because you could easily go down to a pity party, like we could all easily have that, and
Sure.
recognizing that as what it is, and like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, not that, not, we're not taking that street, because that street does not lead me to the goal that I'm going to. But then also speaking to maybe some of the later downfall of emotional downfall, because experiencing the grief and the real rage and anger and whatever that inherently comes along with being human, and when things go terribly wrong in our
Yeah.
lives, that becomes problematic to our relationships as well, when we're not able to fully inhabit human emotions around the things that are going on.
Absolutely. And I feel like, some of what you're talking about is acceptance.
Yes.
Being able to accept what is going on, what is happening, or what has happened to you. I'll just speak from my own personal experience. I didn't take that time to accept. I understood what
Yeah.
happened,
Right.
but I didn't take the time to accept my situation, because it was just full on focus, get better, get better, get better, get better, get better, get better, get better. And that was it. There was no looking back, which served me well
Yes.
in one realm, but not in another. Right. And again, but there are some holes in the fabric that makes up who I am. And maybe not full holes, but some fall downs, if you will, because they're not filled in with healing
Yeah.
emotionally from that trauma.
Yeah.
And I told myself that I was going to make 100% recovery, meaning that I was going to be 100% of who I was before the surgery. And it took me all of a decade plus to accept the fact that that's never going to happen.
Mm.
Like, I had to realize that I'm never going to be Ian at 32 years old pre-surgery ever again. And the only thing I can do is be 100% of the Ian now. And that took me a long time to understand, because I wanted to walk, run, jump, do all the things I could do before, which I can now to a certain extent, but not like I could before.
Right.
I still
So,
have a hitch in my giddy up. Like, I still have deficiencies from my surgery, which I will always have for the rest of my life. And to be honest, some of them are going to get worse just because of age.
right.
Right. And it's just something that I can accept now and realize, okay, yeah, that's going to suck.
Yeah.
That's how it is for me now. But I'm not going to allow that to change how I'm going to live my life. It's not going to stop me from moving forward.
That is such a huge thing because I think it is true. I know for me, I never wanted to claim anything like I'm going to do this or this is definitely going to happen or whatever, because what if it didn't? What if
Yeah.
it didn't happen the way I said, right?
Mhm.
Like, and so to me, like I would just was all in my own way about that constantly. Like, I don't want to say it because then it might not. And what I love about your watch me mindset is that didn't even come into play. In fact, it didn't even occur to you that it might not,
Mhm.
because I think as it was driven from this inner knowing. But then it turned out that it's not going to be the way that you envision it. It is going to come up short of that. How did you not then go have the pity party then? Like, well, I was wrong. That's all mindset too, right? At that moment, when you realize that, okay, yeah, no, it's not going to be 100%, you've got two roads too. You can be like, oh, all right, well, screw it then. I'm not going to be what I screwed up. It's not what I thought. I'm blah, blah, blah. Or
Yeah.
you just continue on with the same mindset with, I don't know, what is it? A fork, a detour, you, you
It's a
know, what is it?
it's a decision, Abby. Like it's a decision. It's the same decision that I made when I got the news, you're not going to run again. Well, I just decided that wasn't going to be the case. And when I came to the epiphany, if you want to call it that, I'm actually not going to make 100% recovery. Well, I decided that that's okay because I can still lead a pretty amazing life. I can still do the things that I want to do and typically how I want to do them. Like I can ran 2 marathons. I went to go for a run last week and I have pain and swelling in my knee because of it. Right. So I can do the things that I want to do, but now I have to weigh the outcome. Like, is it worth it? Is it worth me pushing my body now? Because I pushed it to relearn how to walk and run. And so, and not to get too far off course, but now that the way that my body moves is not the way that it was designed to move. So my
Mm,
joints, ligaments, and bones don't line up like they're supposed to because I still have a garbled message from my spinal cord to my brain to my muscles because of the surgery. Anyway, with that being said, I can't do the things like I was able to do before, but I'm still able to live a very full life. When I wanted to be the pre-surgery Ian at 32 years old, well, that Ian wasn't stopping to smell the roses.
yeah.
That Ian wasn't enjoying a sunset. That Ian wasn't taking the time to appreciate the little things in life. That version of Ian wasn't emotionally open to his kids and his wife. I'm a
Mm,
different person. I'm a better person now than I was then. So it's all about the lens you choose to look through, right? Like, how are you perceiving your reality now? Are you worse off or are you better off? What is the decision that you're going to make when you open your eyes in the morning?
yeah.
Is today going to suck because you're going to allow it to? Or are you going to realize, okay, yeah, maybe I've got a lot of stuff that is pushing back on me, but I'm going to deal with it anyway. And I'm going to find the small things that I enjoy, that make me happy. And I'm going to live today the best that I can. And that's a decision that we get to make every
Right.
day. Not that we have to make, we get to make it. Because there are many days that I could have woke up and I could have said, screw this. I'm not going to be able to walk again or run again. And where would I have ended up? I would probably still be in a wheelchair, right?
Yeah.
Because I made that decision to not be positive about where I am and work with what I have at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a perception, right? And it makes me think of, I mean, what is there, like a million people a day that don't even get to wake up and open their eyes? So sometimes I'll wake up and I'll just be like, oh, I got another day.
Yeah.
Like, wow,
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
amazing.
it was really drilled into me in the hospital when I was there for about 3.5 weeks. A lot of time on my hands, as you can imagine.
Yes.
And I'm, wheeling around in my wheelchair to different areas of the hospital. And I came into the children's neuro unit and
Mm,
I saw kids who had had brain surgery. I
wow.
saw kids with their head shaven, partially with patches of, their skull missing because they've had to have brain surgery. And I'm thinking to myself, like, these are kids who have never experienced some of the things that I have in life. Never been to a prom, probably never had, a kiss, never been on a date, never been on vacation, whatever.
Yeah.
but they're in there just being kids,
Yeah.
like still smiling and playing with toys and just being happy.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what I'm dealing with isn't so bad. If they can be like that, why can't I? And it's a decision to make, to
Yeah.
find the silver lining in the clouds that are in your life. And if you squint hard enough, you will find one every time. But it's just how hard you want to look for it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, how do we do that? I know intellectually, like I'll have these moments where it's like, well, I really should think more positively. Or look, like everybody writes statements they're grateful for in the morning, right? I'm
Mhm.
grateful for this.
Mhm.
But we're not always connected to that gratitude when we write it. Like, right? Like, I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for this.
Yeah.
And it's like something you write, it's like something you're checking off a list, but you're
Mhm.
not actually experiencing the gratitude in that moment, but you're thinking to yourself, I really should be feeling grateful, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you do that when you're kind of stuck in your head that way and you know better, you should think whatever, but your body is kind of just saying, "Oh, but I don't really feel that."
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, and again, I'll speak just for myself, activity helps me. And
Mm,
what I mean by that is just getting out and moving my body. So I do work out every day, 5 days a week, usually, whether that is going for a run or if that is strength training, which is my favorite mode of exercise. But I feel like after I do that, then I've kind of like cleared the junk out of my head.
yeah.
And I don't know if that has to do, just the body pumping the blood through there and the endorphins through there, and you're getting a little serotonin and dopamine all happening at the same time, and you're feeling good, and that helps me kind of move that emotional sludge, if you will, kind of on down the line. And then I can refocus on what I need to do to move myself forward and achieve the things that I want to achieve. And when you're in those spots, and I've been there too, like you're sitting there writing, I really should be grateful for this, that, and the other, but I just don't really, it sounds good to write down, but I'm not feeling that right now. you know, and that's okay, right? Because I think it's unrealistic to think that you're going to wake up every single morning and just be like, I'm grateful for this, and have your heart explode and like,
Right.
butterflies and rainbows are flying out of your face. And like, oh, life is great. Like, that's just not reality. But
No.
there is something in the practice of, you know, we'll call it going through the motions, right? Laying down those neural pathways. So when that gratitude does come, it has a path to follow, right? And
Yeah.
it's a less path, the least path of resistance to finally expose itself to you, so you can grab onto that gratitude and actually put it into your body, into your heart, and feel it, and put it into your aura, so you can actually use that gratitude that's floating out there. But yeah, there's those days where your armor's up and that gratitude is not getting in, but that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I like the way you say that. Like there's a pathway because it is. It's really it's all about opening and closing, right? Like we're either open or we're closed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we can get into the body, and I often will recommend that too, and I do that myself. Like if I'm being dragged around by an emotion that I know is stored in my body that's old and I know I can't talk myself out of it because that doesn't work. It's like, okay, body, let's just take you out and go do something and
Mm-hmm.
get into a different center, get out of the emotional center, get out of the intellectual center and get into the moving center
Yeah.
and just be physical because we kind of have to manipulate the body in some ways. It's our machine, right? And it's like
Yeah.
we've got to sometimes it most of the time it's really running us. And sometimes we just have to step in and just be like, I don't like the direction we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of like you did with the self-pity, like this is not a good direction, we're not going to go there,
Right.
we're redirecting now.
Absolutely. Something that I work with and I talk about is something that I have put together over the last 16 years now from that surgery. And that's my rinse methodology that I use. It's what I speak on. It's what I use with my clients, what I use personally. And it goes through 5 different steps in terms of being able to tap into your potential and essentially get yourself out of that quote unquote pity party or that negative headspace. And that it starts with what we've already talked about. And that's remember
Mhm.
the amazing things that you've already been able to accomplish. Because once we can look back in the past and see what we've been able to do before, we can then set an expectation and understanding of what we can achieve in the future. And then there's the imagine piece, which is the I in the rinse acronym. And that is imagining what you want to achieve. Like, what does that look like? And more importantly, what does that feel like? Right? Because we both know that when you can connect your thoughts and your emotions together, now you start to pull that towards you, right? Because something that Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, who I am a huge fan of, having that ability. And I think for me, like being in that hospital bed and not being able to do anything but use my imagination really helped me paint a picture of the future that I wanted. And I painted it with such tremendous detail that I really started to, I believe, started to create it for me. And not like it just appeared, but I was then more open to different inputs that would lead to that outcome
You
because I
saw
had
more. Yeah.
yes, because I had visualized it so thoroughly, right? Like my reticular activating system was picking up on things, hearing things that I may not have paid attention to before if I wouldn't have taken that time to vividly imagine what I wanted to happen. And then along that journey, that 16-year journey, noticing, which is the in rinse, noticing the small wins that I had. And that's
Mhm.
where my therapist Dolly came into play, where she helped me notice those small wins. Because when I would have those pity parties, like we've talked about, and I would be ruminating, like, God, I'm just not making any progress, or it's not happening fast enough. She was like, whoa, hang on a second. Let's look back and realize that you were in a hospital bed, paralyzed from the chest down, and now you've gone from a wheelchair to a walker to
Mhm.
two canes to one cane to now you're walking unassisted. And when you're able to look back and notice those small wins, we all know that those small wins stacked up over time and they turn into big ones. And that helped me shift my mindset to focus on the things that I could do instead of worrying about the things that I was maybe not so proficient at, which is what the S is all about. It's all about shifting your mindset to be focusing on the things that you can do. Celebrate the things that you can do because that helps you create that momentum. And then the E in rinse is all about expectation, but this is a two-pronged letter, if you will. We need to expect that on our journey to whatever we're trying to achieve, there's going to be hurdles. Like it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. We talked about acceptance already. Accept the fact that it's going to suck sometimes and it's going to be hard, but also expect that you're going to win in the end. Like in having that, there's only one option for me, and that is to succeed. And use whatever metaphor you want to use, to take the island, you got to burn the boats, whatever you want to say. But it all comes down to that. Like it's, I either make it or I make it. And that's the only option that there is. So using that rinse methodology has really helped me get through those times where I'm feeling like, I don't know if I know what I'm doing right now. Right. I don't know if I have what it takes to get to the next level of where I want to go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how successful or how powerful you are, you're going to have those times where you are second guessing yourself. And that's okay. But it's also important to have something that's going to help propel you out of that mindset and push you forward.
Yeah, I love that method. Well, for one thing, as you're talking about it, one of the things I love about it is that it's so grounded in just being human. Because I think so much of the time we just want to be the best or we just want to do it all in a blink of an eye, especially now, like with our instant gratification, everything, like we can hardly wait for anything, right? Like because we're just so outraged that we can't get what we wanted in Prime one day. It's not going to be here in 3 days, like at our doorstep. And that's not reality, right?
Mhm.
And to hold these expectations of ourselves like we're somehow superhuman or something. Like I love every part of that method is also just really grounded in, look, anything's possible and we've got our feet on the ground. We're human beings and this is part of a longer journey.
Mhm.
And when we're dealing with the unknown, it is scary and there's things that are going to happen. It's like my husband is in finance and he's always telling me, the market does not go straight up. That's not how it goes. It doesn't do
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Like it's a ride. And of course, we all want everything to just be straight up. And it's just not realistic, but it doesn't mean that there's not so much like great juiciness and joy and experience in the living of it, and so
Yes.
much celebration to be had. I love that story about, the walker, because absolutely I can imagine being, on a walker and just being like, oh my God, like it's been however many months or years, I'm still in this freaking walker.
Hmm.
And you completely forget to remember, wait a minute, I used to be in a wheelchair. Before that, I was in a hospital bed. Like, what
Right.
an important lesson to remember.
And it's one that I have now forever that I can look back on and use for strength. And again, that's why it's so important. And I think that when we have these ups and downs in our life, and it's difficult, I will screw up this saying, but it's difficult to see the frame when you're in the picture
Mm.
or see the label when you're in the
In
jar,
the
or
jar,
however it
right?
goes, right? When you're in it, it sucks, right?
Yeah.
It sucks. But in hindsight, when you're able to look back at it and you can now extrapolate a lesson from it, man, does that make that time so much more valuable? Because you learn so much more about yourself in those hard times than you do in the good times, right?
Yeah.
When quote unquote shit hits the fan and you have to respond and react, and you do, and you overcome, man, do you learn so much about yourself that you
Yeah.
can now use over and over again. I like to talk about something I call a metaphysical backpack. And that's when adversity hits and you figure it out. You FIO. You figured it out and now you've created a tool. Whether that was a physical tool, emotional tool, a spiritual tool, whatever you did to get over that hump, you now have. And you put it in your metaphysical backpack and you carry it along with you. And then when the next adversity comes, because we all know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when,
Right.
you pull that tool out you used last time and you go to work on this problem. And then when you overcome that problem, now you have another tool, put it in the metaphysical backpack, and you just carry these with you for the rest of your life because they are skills, they are tools that build your resilience that you are able to use to battle adversity every time it comes.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I usually ask my guests a specific question, but you asked yourself and answered it in the beginning, I think, which was if you could just shake people and let them know one thing, what would you want them to know?
Mm-hmm.
And you said that in the beginning. So I'm going to ask you instead, what is intuition mean to you? What does it mean to you? And how do you recommend people use it?
I think we've talked about it in a couple different ways here already, and that is taking all of your past experiences and utilizing them and listening to yourself. Because if you are quiet, if you can be still and you can think through your life experience, you can figure out almost any problem.
Mm. Hmm.
But you're gonna have to dig into your past. You're gonna have to dig into your experiences. You have to dig into your lessons. You have to dig into those times of life that sucked. And again, pull out those lessons that you've learned and then be able to use all of that experience to put towards whatever situation that you're trying to tackle, whatever problem you're trying to solve. And for me, I think that's where your intuition comes from, is your past experience.
Love it. Well, Ian, I'm going to have all of your information in the show notes for people to be able to find you and your podcast,
Appreciate
Positive
that.
Persistence,
Mhm.
and your coaching services and all that. I want to thank you so much for coming on today. I think you just shared so many pearls of wisdom, and I can't wait for people to be able to hear them.
Abby, thank you so much for having me on again. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I am grateful. And I will be writing in my journal tomorrow morning that I have gratitude for being able to be on your show and you share me with your audience and your community. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.